My name's Dominic. I am a caseworker with the Outreach Hub and Vinnie's Vans. Technically, I fall under the Sustaining Tenancies team. I work in Woolloomooloo, but I work all over the city, particularly in Waterloo, Redfern, Surrey Hills and Haymarket areas, working with rough sleepers and working with tenants in public housing. I've been with Vinnie's for just over 6 months now, but I volunteered for Vinnie's for about a year before that. I think when we're noticing more and more now, people that wouldn't typically be falling into the rough sleeper and homeless category that are starting to fall into it more. Of course, as the cost of living crisis is happening in Australia and in Sydney, especially in the metropolitan area, we're kind of seeing a lot of people that are falling into the familiar traps of becoming a rough sleeper or falling into the system. It's more important than ever, I think, that people are engaging with services before that happens. I know for a fact that numbers that we're seeing of people that are sleeping in cars but are still working or still have jobs, or people in crisis accommodation services like Matthew Talbot or Vincentian House that are still working is a lot higher than it was previously. It's been really clear to me from my work in the Outreach Hub and the outreach space, working with the Vinnie's Van, that people are starting to come up and are presenting more issues that could lead to them losing a tenancy and falling into homelessness or some level of homelessness. Yeah, there's definitely a heavy importance on early intervention work. During the night, it's a lot of referral or getting people prepped for services the next day. So I am basically there in those spaces to provide information. More commonly, we are seeing people that are having issues with their tenancy where they might be going to arrears or they might be going to some kind of financial difficulties, and that's presenting an issue where they could be terminated. From that, I really encourage people to try and connect with me so I can connect them to the relevant services that can assist. Vinnie's can assist in some ways with assisting people with paying off debts or paying off loans with Mills loans. We also do brokerage and that kind of thing to help people cover debts that are going to threaten their tenancy. With regards to someone losing their job, Vinnie's have done a lot of work with connecting with different employment services around the city through like the different locations that we got, like the Osdam Learning Centre in Woolloomooloo. They'll have employment hubs that are there for people to come in and engage with supports. A big thing I'll do is I'll try and connect as many people as I can to the different Centrelink hubs that are around the city. Centrelink's a massive barrier for people. It kind of is for everyone. It's a really difficult environment. It's very challenging. And so if you're someone that's also suffering from potentially losing a tenancy or any of the other things that go with that, it can be an incredibly daunting environment. One of the more important things I've found is to figure out the correct Centrelink pathways for people to go down and who are the right people to talk to for the right assistance. So I will often encourage people to go visit Centrelink that appears at outreach hubs or appears at services that are kind of connected with rough sleepers at Wayside Chapel or the Osland Learning Centre or at the Newtown Neighbourhood Centre, and kind of encourage that advocacy there, that when a caseworker goes with someone or they're referred by them, it kind of extends it as showing that they're in a real crisis situation versus just someone going into Centrelink and trying to kind of acknowledge themselves or push themselves forward. If someone's getting referred by a caseworker from Vinnie's, it's normally to say, this situation is, potentially snowballing and getting a lot more difficult. I find the most important thing I've got at those times is just knowledge to pass on to people and kind of following up that afterwards as well. I think one of the other biggest challenges is probably touched on a lot is the fact that homelessness is becoming such a apparent and rising issue in Sydney especially. It always has been an issue, but it's as cost of living is affecting all of us, we're seeing more and more people homeless that are in different circumstances than the rough sleepers you see on the streets. There's a lot of funding that could be addressed to help services to be able to provide more support. And Vinnie's is funded by DCJ in part, and all the other services are funded by DCJ in part, but it's always going to be the case that the funding is undermined by the amount of support needed. I saw a stat that was talking about how in so many hundred SHS requests, only a few are able to be met and some aren't able to be met. And, circumstances like that, I don't think people in the rest of society are aware of until they actually come in touch with it. A big thing I've noticed is the amount of education that I've been able to pass on to people in my own life about what's going on with homelessness in Sydney, the amount of people that didn't know or weren't aware that Link to Home was a service. in Sydney is crazy. And even I see that with a lot of the people that come to the van that might be just coming for a feed because they don't have access to food, they don't have the funds for food, and then making them aware that these services are available. More awareness of services, more funding of services, and the biggest challenge I face is just the time of day that I operate. It's challenging time to try and find someone accommodation at 8 o'clock at night. It's much easier during the day. It's where Link to Home really comes in handy with calling up those numbers and trying to get people referred through there. And I've seen it myself when I've called up the service myself. I've referred countless people to Link to Home at night. And for instance, I was just talking with one of the tenancy facilitators here about a client that when I was just at the front that I met with at Waterloo a month ago. She was in a really, really tough way. Referred her to Link to Home. Through that now she's been able to get housing and been sent in-house, and she looked so much better today. And it was through making that call to Link to Home and referring her to the service, and I'm sure the excellent service that was provided to her managed to get her into some housing like this. And hearing about the wraparound support she's getting now makes me really happy with the collaborations that we're doing. What I've been able to see in the past 6 months here in my own work, I haven't seen really reflected in the media about what's happening in Sydney with people's tenancies, what's happening with the state of rough sleepers and how they're living. There's a lot of publicity, and a lot of people on social media in Australia will tend to look externally at things happening across the world. And that's for sure. There are atrocities happening all across the world, and there are people that are suffering across the world. But some of the information I've been able to kind of pass on to people, and the experience I've been able to have to pass on to people in my own life has really shifted their own view of how people in Sydney are living. And the fact that essentially for any of us in society, we're only a couple of wrong steps or unlucky decisions or bad things happening to us before we're in a situation of the people that we assist. And I think in community, that's a big thing for people to be aware of too. As we are in this cost of living crisis, it's definitely important for people to be aware of how people are going through it as well. And just awareness of what's available to them and what's available for people in the community to access, and supporting those services and supporting them as much as you can so more people can access them and we aren't in such a crisis anymore. Yeah.